We are extremely excited to announce our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Everyone knows and loves their hotels and casinos, but now you can use the top-rated Hard Rock Bet sportsbook to place all your NFL bets this season. Hard Rock Bet is the only legal sportsbook in the state of Florida and is also available in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado, with more states to come. You can also play on Hard Rock Bet's online casino if you are in New Jersey. As we gear up for the NFL season, sign up for Hard Rock Bet and make a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Head over to Hard Rock Bet, sign up, and make your first deposit today. The Ravens dominate the NFC. No longer the Detroit Lions go into Baltimore, and as the kids would say, belt to ass. Absolute beatdown. Congrats to the Lions, Dan Campbell. We will dive into this game from the Lions angle. A massive win. Like Troy Aikman said, there might be 17 games on the schedule. Some games are bigger than others, and this was massive, especially a place a couple years ago where they came into and just got throttled. So, massive win for the Lions. Not the end of the world for the Ravens, missing a couple key players on defense, and it showed. Couldn't run the ball beside the one long Henry run. So we'll dive into all things this game. I did a video earlier today on just reacting immediately to the Bosa injury. One quick thing on that I want to hit on tonight. Something with the Falcons that I got red flagged. And then Deion had some comments to the Kelsey bros about the Shedeur situation falling in the draft that it just made me kind of shake my head. But I need you to subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Subscribe to this channel. Appreciate everyone watching. Coming here every, Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night. This Thursday night, though, we will not be doing one. I have to take a trip to New York City. We got a Ryder Cup event Thursday. Then I'm going to the Ryder Cup on Friday. But I'll be back for football on Saturday morning, but there will be no live show Thursday night, which, Arizona, Seattle. I'm an NFC guy, NFC West guy, but hey, I'm gonna have to enjoy myself in New York City and won't be able to do it. But before we dive in, and also podcasts, obviously, 3 and Out, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen, podcast, YouTube, all the same. A lot of content flowing. But before we dive into any football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. I've never been to Baltimore Stadium, but going to D.C. several times when I lived in Philly, driving by, it always looked pretty cool. And it obviously is just a great place at night. You want to go to one of these football games. You want to go to an NFL game. You want to go to a college game. GameTime's the best. You can search by the team. You can search by the venue, price points, where you want to sit, concerts. It doesn't get any easier to pick your spot relative to the stage. Gone to a lot of concerts because of my close personal friends. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I was actually going to talk about this after I kind of dove into the nitty-gritty about this football game. But I think it won't do it justice if we don't set the scene. I don't think we give enough credit to what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have done turning this franchise around. It's been several years now where the Lions, they haven't just been like a playoff team. They've clearly been one of the best teams in the league. Like, this is like 3 strong years running where it's like, Jesus, they're good. They have good players at literally every position. Where for most of my adult life, right, I turned 16, and the year 2000, up until Dan Campbell got there, this franchise, in all of team professional sports, I mean, at least baseball and basketball, I can't speak to hockey, I would say was the main butt of everyone's joke, was the team that you pointed to as just a complete laughingstock. And their one claim to fame was always in front of all of us sitting down to eat, well, depending on, West Coast or East Coast, but they always played on Thanksgiving and they were always one of the worst teams. I looked up their record in the 2000s. So from 2000 to 2010, their record was 56 and 104. From 2011 to 2020, their record was 72 and 87. I mean, they were a putrid franchise. And from basically 10 to 20, they had Matt Stafford, Calvin Johnson, Ndamukong Suh. Like, they had really high-end players. And their franchise consistently sucked. And this guy, going into tonight, had 45 wins tonight, 46. He's 46 and 36. And that's with starting his first year at 3 and 13. They have turned this thing around. If I would have told you the moment they made the trade, Jared Goff for Matt Stafford, even with the number 1 overall picks, it wasn't number 1 overall picks, but the 2 first rounders, we all would have bet against it. You're like, wait, you're taking Jared Goff, who felt like damaged goods, for Matt Stafford, who still had a lot of football left, and the first rounders aren't going to be that good because of the situation with the Rams. And we look back, that move changed their franchise. I mean, Jared Goff, listen, inside the dome, consistently plays like somewhere 5 to 8, right? He's a high-end. Tonight, he looks like one of the best players in the league. And it's pretty clear when you protect for that guy on this Dan Campbell team, with Laporta, with the running backs, with St. Brown, with Jameson Williams, he might be a dinosaur in the way he plays. I mean, Lamar Jackson is the best version of the modern quarterback. Can pass, can run, can move, can do it all. Can throw bombs, can accurate over the middle, has good arm strength. He's got it all. Jared Goff is a relic. You see Troy Aikman in the booth, like, he's of that era. Can't move at all, pocket quarterback. I mean, wants to run at the last possible thing. All else fails, and even then, he's like, I'm still going to throw the ball. And he did one tonight on a third down where he's like, I might be able to run for 5 yards, but I'm going to throw it, and he skips the ball. But what they have done to this franchise is just, it's such a high-level operation, what they got rolling. And you watch tonight the amount of talent. Like, think about this. The team they just played is not the most famous franchise, right? It's not the Lakers. It's not the Cowboys. It's not the Yankees. But if you just speak over that period of time, from 2000 till today, the Ravens are known as one of the standards in professional sports. Just consistently well-run. Good coaching, good players. Obviously, he's not the GM anymore, but a legendary general manager who is still a big part of the operation. Great ownership, strong fan base, just great culture. Their teams have looked mostly the same. They're obviously, with this version of Lamar, much more offensive. But it's just like one of the standards in pro team sports, the Baltimore Ravens. And you watch the Lions, that within a couple years, Dan Campbell and Holmes are like, we're like your equal. And honestly, we might have better players top to bottom than you. It's like, geez Louise, how did they do it? And you saw tonight the defining characteristic of Dan Campbell, who I consider the third Harbaugh brother. And tonight, it looked like prime Jim Harbaugh beating his brother's ass because that's what he did. He whooped John tonight. And listen, obviously, when you're a CEO head coach, your coordinators play big roles. I questioned not the hire. Like, I understood why Dan Campbell hired Johnny Morton. But a lot of times, guys like Johnny Morton that have never been a head or a coordinator, never called plays, but have been an assistant, as Troy was saying, I think been in the league for 18 years, bounced around, has a lot of like high-level guys pounding the table for him, but you're like, I don't know, man. It's just, and then you saw tonight as he got rolling, he's running trick plays. He ran an incredible like handoff to St. Brown, option play for a touchdown on a fourth down that was Ben Johnson-esque. The fourth down play to St. Brown, if Humphreys doesn't hold, which typically I hate defensive holding, sometimes it's pretty obvious. St. Brown's still wide open. Goff hits him in stride. Incredible play. And then, like what the Harbaugh brothers want, he's going to call run plays over and over and over again. And obviously, with David Montgomery, they have one of the more physical between the tackles runners. And Gibbs, I don't think quite gets the credit. It's not like Gibbs is some softy. Now, you would consider him more of an outside space guy. He's got no problem lowering his shoulder. I mean, they call that thing thunder and lightning. I saw Montgomery beelining it, looked like he was going to score. Doesn't quite at the top end speed, which, in fairness, most guys are not Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley. They get in space. Most running backs get caught. But what a performance at the line of scrimmage. And Kelvin Shepard, the defensive coordinator. I mean, these two guys are replacing two head coaches. And not just two head coaches, the best offensive coordinator candidate in a long time, and a guy who put on an absolute clinic down the stretch in Aaron Glenn coaching with me and you last year. I mean, half their fucking team was gone. He was coaching guys. They were just finding guys off the street. Oh, yeah, they had a game against the Minnesota Vikings, who had an incredible season, and they beat them with a bunch of practice squad guys. That's who those guys replaced. And they came in at one point in time. I don't know the final stat. I mean, I know they sacked him 7 times, but when they got to 5, they sacked Lamar Jackson 5 times. That was like the third most he'd ever been sacked. So I bet 7 is got to be near, if not the most he's ever been sacked in a game. And I think the only way to play a guy like that is whether you got great athletes or slow and steady guys, you cannot run up the field on Lamar. How often do we see that? Now, I would say that about any athletic quarterback. Like, that's like coaching 101. Because their ability to stop and start, change of direction, and then obviously explosive plays, especially if you're playing man-to-man defense. If you're not in a zone defense, all those guys' heads are chasing the offensive players. So Lamar can just take off and run around, and you look up, he's got 100 yards rushing at the end of the game, and probably a couple touchdowns and a bunch of explosive plays. Tonight, it felt like their defensive linemen all broke down and kind of corralled them. They were not just running up the field aimlessly. And whatever they did throughout the week, coaching that thing up, and I'm sure they will talk about it in their post-game press conferences, that's an elite game plan to stop, got something in my eye here, just, I mean, an all-time great athlete who is playing at a really high level, even though tonight, relative to like his best performances, wasn't. The Ravens can't beat you, and typically will not beat you when you dominate them up front on defense when it comes to them running the ball. And obviously this Derrick Henry, I saw a stat, he has 3 fumbles so far this year. Over the course of 2023 and 2024, 34 games, he had fumbled the ball 3 total times over a 2-year span, and he's fumbled the ball, and obviously in these 2 situations against the Bills and tonight against the Lions, accounted for 10 points and changed the course of the game. So it's clearly in his head. But you look at tonight, like he had 1 point, I don't know what I think he finished with 50 yards, that 28 of those came on the 1 touchdown run. So Derrick Henry had 50 yards. Yeah, it came on the touchdown run. So other than that, if you say, hey, listen, you're going to give him the 1 early explosive run. If I would have told you that the rest of the game he's only going to get 22 yards, that's not really how the Ravens play. And even Lamar, like there were a couple times tonight, typically that run turns into, instead of 3 yards, 17 yards. But there was a dude there tripping, tackling him on his feet. The tackling, and when they got a hand on Lamar, there were a couple other bodies there, and they were not letting him get out of there. It was those 2 coordinators. If I was Dan Campbell, to me, the game balls go to my 2 coordinators. And then if they want to hand it out to whoever they want to after that point, go ahead. But we speak so much in this sport about game planning, getting ready. Ray Lewis said forever, you pay me Monday through Saturday. Sundays are for free. And that's so true, right? The games are won and lost on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday. We talk so much about these guys, the intellectual capacity of these offensive coordinators putting together game plans, how difficult it is to coach defense because Roger, the entertainment aspect of the sport, the rules are against you. The CTE, Will Smith movie, they wanted to take down football. So they throw flags if you fucking breathe on somebody. If I hear defenseless receiver one more time, I'm going to throw up. They're playing football. They're running a slant across the middle. Imagine telling Ronnie Lott, that guy's a defenseless receiver. You're not allowed to touch him. But that's the world we play in now, which I say this all the time. And Kyle Brandt said this last week. Got no problem protecting the quarterbacks. Totally. We can't just have a bunch of backup quarterbacks week in, week out. But at the end of the day, it is football. And it is really hard for the defensive guys to play given the rules. But the one area where they allow the sport to still be as vicious as it's ever been is the O line and D line going up against each other. And physical play always translates up there. And typically, the Ravens, I would say, are one of the more physical teams in the league, offensively and defensively, at the point of attack, the line of scrimmage. Well, you saw tonight, they're missing their star defensive tackle, Mbabuke, I can't say his name very well, and Kyle Van Noy. I was doing some math. Last year, they accounted for almost 40 quarterback hits and I think 19 sacks. Like, those guys are their dominant upfront players. And I said this earlier when I was doing the reaction video to Bosa. Once you lose like your high-end impact defensive lineman, there's no replacing them. Like, the Chargers avoided disaster because they couldn't have replaced Khalil Mack. It does not exist. You can't do it by committee. So you lose your max defensive tackle who you pay $20 to $25 million a year. Van Noy, who you did hire off Pat McAfee's show, but immediately came and started kicking ass, and you've extended, and he's been a badass for you. Like, there's no replacing that. And the Lions knew it. And they came after them all night long up front. Handoff, 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 handoff. And then the play action stuff that St. Brown just dominates, right? And Laporta, because they run these routes over the middle of the field, play action, the linebackers are all up front, and you have these spaces in the middle of the field, even with excellent DB play that the Ravens have. So hat tip to, Johnny Morton that I questioned whether it was going to work. I'm not taking a victory lap, but I thought defensively, this young coach that Dan Campbell said I knew he was going to be a coach back when I was around him in Miami. I was less worried about that because he had a front row seat. If you watch Hard Knocks, he was like this with Aaron Glenn. They obviously have good personnel. They have several defensive linemen. They've drafted and signed these linebackers that fly around. Branch is a stud. I mean, he could have easily had a pick tonight. They went right off his hands. I mean, just talk about a guy. We talk a lot about Derwin James, a lot about Kyle Hamilton. Maybe it's because he plays in Detroit, but that guy's an elite player. He's a special player. And to me, when you have great safety play, and obviously the Ravens have had great safety play for decades, it can really impact your defense. It makes your defense feel a lot faster. So I would say the Lions' cornerback play can be hit or miss, as a lot of teams can. But when you got that dude flying around, tackling guys that your corners might miss, and then making plays on any ball that's thrown, kind of in situations where you're trying to fit it in between the corner and the safety, and he can cover that ground that fast. It was really, really impressive to watch. So congrats to the Lions. Jared Goff, who takes a lot of shit for not playing well outdoors. Now, it's September 22nd. I think part of the knock is the weather, which he's from Marin County. I'm from about 45 minutes north of there from Davis. He went to Cal. Where we grew up, where we spent a lot of time in California, he lived in LA we're not used to freezing cold weather. He plays in a dome now, so he's never going to be Brett Favre in a torrential downpour, right? That's not going to be or Mahomes in -2 degrees. But if you can block for him and you can run the ball, I do think they could function. And clearly, the way they had that if your defensive line, I'm not going to expect 7 sacks in the NFL, especially against a guy like Lamar Jackson week in, week out. But if you tell me they have one of the more consistent pass rushes, obviously Aiden Hutchinson's one of the better players in the league, they're going to be a fucking problem, like a major problem. And I think we all reacted after week 1. They got their butt kicked by the Packers. Packers had more on the line, lost to them twice last year. The game was in Lambeau. But the last 2 weeks have been, this team's for real. You know why? Because if their coaching is solid, no one argued about the talent. Not a soul with a brain. Because they have too many elite players at too many positions. Obviously, they had to replace, a pretty legendary center, move a guard over. They had to replace a guard. They draft a guy. So you never quite know. Look pretty good tonight. So I would say this. Health was a big issue for the Lions. If they can stay healthy, they have as good of a chance as anyone in the NFC. Because we talk a lot about Philly and their high-end elite players. That's what the Lions have. Like high-end elite players. So massive win. I think the Ravens, I say they'll be okay. They're playing the Chiefs this week. So either the Chiefs or the Ravens are going to be 1-3, unless they tie, and then they'd be 1-2-1. I think I'll go out on a limb right now and say they won't tie. But the Henry fumble thing is a problem because when they're humming and they're dominating, he's running around and big plays. What's weird about Henry, one of the greatest running backs of his generation, he'll be a future Hall of Famer. More potent from the 50-yard line than he is from the 2. Honestly, he's not, and maybe statistically, you could fight me on this and argue the other side. He's not a great goal line back. Because if you think about it, like, why is the tush push so effective? Because of the angle and the leverage that Jalen gets. Think about some of the best, like Montgomery tonight, the way he's built, right? Forever with the Ravens, like Ray Rice, J.K. Dobbins. Some of their backs are more stout, lower to the center of gravity. Henry's like 6'4", standing right up, huge target to hit at the line or at the goal line. And they ran the 2 plays a night before they got stuffed on the 4th down, where he just get sawed off on his legs. He's got no shot. So unless he's going to leap over everybody, they got to get Henry right. Because, listen, Lamar, it's weird. Like, his stats don't look bad. I thought, body language wasn't terrible, but they were just off. Something was just off. Now, likely, maybe comes back this week. Obviously, Zay Flowers is a good player. Mark Andrews looks good. They got to get Henry going and that fumble thing out of his head. Because you could say it's kind of freakish, but the numbers speak for himself. 3 fumbles in 2023 and 2024 total. And he's got 3 fumbles this year. And obviously 2 of them, just devastating timing. Tonight, granted, they weren't leading like the Bills game. They were down 28-24, but then boom, Lions get it, kick a field goal, and now you're down a touchdown. So your back's really against the wall. Just fantastic. Like, that's, ESPN takes a lot of shit. Most of it self-inflicted. But hiring those 2 guys brings a feel to that game. You could tell a couple times that Troy went 6 to midnight. Because, again, he sees himself in Jared Goff. Like, can't move, not the biggest arm. I ain't Lamar Jackson. I can't do any of the stuff he's doing. And you could tell how excited he was on that 4th down pass when he throws that little looper into St. Brown, who was just a badass. St. Brown is everything you want in an NFL player. And I think Jared Goff was saying it. Like, there's not a 100-catch guy in the league that's blocking like him. And you got him cracking on defensive linemen. You got him cracking on linebackers. St. Brown's a dog. That's the one thing the Lions have. And this is what John Harbaugh and Jim, they have had a lot on their good teams. Like, crazy tough dudes that, like, you don't really want to see. And I think the one thing we say about the Lions, like, what are they going to be like? And it's kind of the knock on Jared Goff. But he is surrounded by some badasses. Like, he's surrounded by a bunch of guys that when I watched Ozzie Newsome, when they showed that clip of him at the end of the game, I could see him telling DaCosta tomorrow, like, the 7-8 guys on the Lions that he just dreams about having on their team. Because they kind of look like the Ravens, the way they play, their physicality. But that's high-level product. Like, that product, we had some games over the weekend. They're like, if I wasn't being paid and this wasn't my living, like, would I watch this? And the answer is no, right? But that was a game that whether I was a plumber, whether I was a doctor, which I'd never be because I'm not smart enough, or whether I did this, like, I wouldn't miss a snap of that bad boy. And having Buck and Aikman and the whole feel and the vibe, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. So congrats to the Lions. A couple other things I just want to bang out really quick. Yesterday, the 49ers doctor, and I was thinking about this today. The hard part is if you're a player and something hurts, right? The NFL is a lot different than these other sports because if you're Aaron Judge or you're Kawhi Leonard, all your contracts are guaranteed. So whether you're injured, whether you're not, like, I'm getting all my money no matter what. In football, it becomes like you don't play in games, you don't make the same amount of money. Obviously, guaranteed money is money coming from you, but there's a lot of, like, injury guarantees. Like, these football contracts are really complicated. roster bonuses, in-game bonuses. Like, you don't make the same amount of money on injured reserve. I don't think most people realize that. But, like, you feel pain, and obviously there are some injuries that are very evident. But then there are some injuries like something doesn't feel right. And the doctor's like, no, we think your ACL's intact. And it's like, I was always taught you just kind of believe what doctors say. And Nick Bosa's like, yeah, man, I don't think it's right. Well, the doctors are telling Kyle Shanahan, they're like, yeah, we think he's good. And to me, an ACL injury should be pretty basic. And a lot of people keep asking, like, how did the 49ers get so many people hurt? And it kind of hit me, which is crazy because Stanford Medical is not quite a stone's throw, but 15 minutes away from where the 49ers operation. Their own doctors are telling the 49ers that we think he's going to be okay. And the player is like, bro, I think something's majorly fucked up here. So to me, the 49ers, you can fire strength staff, you can fire trainers. Are we sure their doctors are capable and credible? This would have sounded crazy 5 years ago, but based on the evidence and literally based on yesterday, I text so many people. I'm like, pretty embarrassing look for the 49ers medical situation off the field. For their star player, I guess Purdy technically is now, but their second highest paid player to go like, I don't think you're right. And this is a precarious situation. I do feel for players where, are some of these doctors for the 49ers sending these guys back in like, you're okay. And then like they get more injured. I don't know. But like they fired strength coaches before. They love firing position coaches. How about we take a deep look at some of these doctors that you got with the franchise? Because I got a massive red flag on them. And when Nick Bosa knows his body better than like the basic test that shows they clearly missed, which feels like it never misses. We always know right away, like all signs point to the ACL. We hear that all the time. Then what happens? Tore his ACL. Yet it was like, yeah, we think he's cool. And Nick's like, I don't think I'm cool. And then obviously today, out for the year. So rough day for those medical degrees in Santa Clara. I have a massive red flag on any situation where a team is struggling, college or the pros, and it happens in both, but it's probably it happens more publicly, I feel like, at least from a national level in the NFL, where in college it would have to be like Alabama, Ohio State for something to happen for it to be a national story. But I saw a headline today that Zach Robinson, the Titans, or not the Titans, but the Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator, is moving down to the field. And I watched a couple clips of Raheem Morris after the game. I don't want to say distraught, but you could tell he was pretty rattled because they just got their ass kicked 30-0 against a team that we all thought might be the worst team in the league. And now they're moving Zach Robinson down to the field. And Zach Robinson's, if this doesn't get fixed, which is going to be a problem because their next 3 games are against the Commanders, the Bills, and the 49ers, where they could easily lose all 3 of those games. And if Penix keeps playing like he's playing, they will. Zach Robinson will get fired. And the reason he will get fired, because we talk a lot about some of these hot seats, especially one down in Miami. Do you know an underrated hot seat? Atlanta. The GM and the head coach were like, we want Kirk Cousins for $90 million. He gets benched in year 1 because they fell in love with Michael Penix, who they said was too good to pass up at pick number 8, who also currently sucks. And the problem for Raheem is, now, Raheem has, in fairness, worked on both sides of the ball. Pretty rare for most coaches in the NFL. He's a defensive coach, but he's spent time on the offensive side of the ball, and he knows the Shanahan system pretty well because he's tight with those guys, and he's been around them for a decade. But, like, it's going to be hard for him to fix Michael Penix. He's pretty, I would say, predicated. The success of their offense is going to come with whoever's calling the plays. And to me, Zach is about 2 more performances away from getting fired. And the moment he gets fired, the next to go would be Raheem and the staff. And I would say if this thing gets ugly and Michael Penix looks like a disaster and this team 7-10 or worse, I think this whole place gets nuked because this owner's in his mid-80s. He spent a ton of money, and this team looks really bad. And you have moments like that. Listen, you're going to lose football games. It's going to happen. Like the Ravens just lost. Kind of got their butt kicked, but it's It's the NFL, playing the Lions, probably a 13-win team. When it's all said and done, if we win 11 or 12 games, it's not going to look that bad. But if you lose to the Carolina Panthers in week 3, when you're 1-1, 30 to nothing, 30 to nothing, when you've invested in guys like Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake, like you've invested a lot into the offensive side of the ball beside the quarterback. And I said this when these offensive linemen started going down at the end of training camp. I said, ugh. One thing about Penix is this guy ain't Lamar Jackson. He is a pocket quarterback. He's actually much closer. He ran a fast time at the combine, but that's not how he plays. He wants to play like Jared Goff. Couple steps back, sling that pill. Ideally, throw bombs. Yet this offense, the bomb offense, isn't exactly the Shanahan offense. And it's actually not really the players that they have. Much more of like short and intermediate guys. It just doesn't mesh. But regardless, Arthur Blank doesn't know that. He doesn't speak football. You know what he speaks? 30 to nothing losses. The guy we drafted 8th overall sucks. Like, that's how people get fired. And the moment you move a guy from the booth, you're basically acknowledging, like, this is a disaster. Is he just all of a sudden going to become a better play caller from the sideline? There's nothing more overrated than doing that move because he was up there because he felt more comfortable being up there, right? Some guys are on the ground floor. Some guys are in the booth. Robert Saleh, Brian Flores, field. Vic Fangio, booth. Tonight, Johnny Morton, booth. Ben Johnson, when he was the offensive coordinator for the Lions, sideline. It doesn't matter. It's just, are you good at your job or you're not? And clearly this guy's not. So you can move him down. I don't think much is going to change. I think we can see this thing coming from a mile away. And if somehow they don't pull two wins of their next 3 games, again, Commanders, Bills, 49ers, if it got really weird, they could lose all these games. And if you're looking up and they're like 1-5, obviously Zach Robinson would be gone. And I think we would talk about Raheem Morris being, and the GM, Terry Fontenot, the whole building would be in major, major trouble. I want to end on this because I didn't really care when the story came out that Shedeur, was going to get drafted by the Ravens and told him, don't draft me. It's like, I'm kind of tired of this. We're talking about this guy that's like 4th-stringer on the Browns. But then I saw Deion go on with Travis and Jason and bring it up. He's like, you guys see that story? He's like, yeah, it was true. He's like, Ozzie called me. Deion played for the Ravens back in the day. If you watch Hard Knocks, back with like Saragusa and Ray Lewis and Shannon Sharp, like Deion was there. So Deion's like, I got on the phone with Ozzie and I told, like, I've never learned anything from the bench. And I don't know, maybe after a while, I haven't thought about it that much. I thought part of the Shedeur story was not that Deion was the guy dictating everything. It was like some of these were Shedeur's ideas. And watching this clip of Deion talk, I'm not going to give Shedeur a complete pass, but like if most of us were in Shedeur's shoes, we would do everything our dad is telling us to do when he's Deion freaking Sanders. But listening to Deion talk, like, I've never learned anything from the bench. Well, no shit. Guys like you, Michael Jordan, Peyton Manning, you've never been on the bench. Once you fall to the 5th round and you are a quarterback, you are a 100% lock to be on the bench. And his big thing was like, we didn't want to go somewhere with a quarterback. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. When you become a mid to late round guy, 5th, 6th, 7th rounder, you are going to a place and you are not going to play. You are not going to play. But if you go to a bad place, usually everyone gets shitty in that environment. And if you are forced to play, it's usually really ugly and it can derail your career. Yet I was looking Tanner McKee, who a couple years ago, Howie drafted in the 6th round. I would say of the current backups that doesn't really get a chance to play because Jalen doesn't miss that much time. I guess he played last year. He's a guy that I'm telling you, watching a year when he becomes a free agent, like 1 year, $15 million to get an opportunity to start. You know why? He's in a good organization with good coaching. You don't want to be Lamar Jackson's backup and be a part of the Ravens? Are you insane? You want to go to the Cleveland Browns, where they had literally just drafted a quarterback in the 3rd round. So even if they did draft you, they've told you they like this other guy more than you. Where I'm looking at the Ravens, like, you'd just probably be his backup. Where Ozzie clearly would like you. Or when Howie called you, clearly would be interested. You don't want to go to the Eagles or the Ravens. And this is the problem. They said, guys like Magic Johnson or whatever can't coach. Totally understandable. How can they relate to anybody? They can't see through your eyes. Why do they say Steve Kerr is such a good coach? Because he's been the last guy on the bench. He's played in big games. He's been a role player. When injuries have happened, he's had to start on great teams. He's literally done it all. What's Mike Vrabel's go-to speech at the beginning of training camp? I heard Taylor Lewan and Will Compton say it's his go-to. He said, there's not a guy in here's seat I haven't been in. A guy that's probably going to get cut sat there. A guy that was just drafted and nervous sat there. A guy that's about to win a job sat there. A guy that's making a lot of money, team captain, sat there. Sat in all your seats. Deion hasn't sat in all their seats. Deion's only been, I don't know, the greatest corner of all time. That wasn't Shedeur. So, Shedeur's going to a place here's the other thing. If I draft you, I want to make you successful. And that's what it felt like with the Browns when they drafted him. It's I think this is a weird situation. Why do you want this? That'd be the last place you would want to go. You want to go to not a dysfunctional operation. You want to go to a place with a clear vision that knows what they're doing, that has a history of making things work. Where you go what's their quarterback history? Well, they kicked Baker to the curb, and then they gave this guy $230 million who can't play dead in the Western and who's god-awful, and if they cut tomorrow, we'll never get another job in the NFL ever again. And they're literally just playing Joe Flacco, who can't move and is mostly god-awful because I don't know why, but they are. That's the organization you want to go to? And because in Deion's mind, well, you put me there, I would be an immediate star and everyone would, and it's true. But that's not the way quarterback works. So I think Deion, in his mind, is writing checks that his body, as a player, always could cash. There's a famous story that he's told before. The Giants, who in his draft were drafting 7th or 8th, handed him some cognitive test. It was the equivalent of the Wonderlic or whatever. And he looked at the guy and he said, what pick do you have? And the Giants assistant GM or OC or DC or whatever said, I think 7th pick. And Deion laughed in his face, said, I won't be there, and walked away. And you know what? You can do that shit when you're Deion Sanders. But when you're 95% of most draft classes, you can't. I heard a story this year about Abdul Carter. Wouldn't fill out some forms for a lot of teams. He can do that. You know why? Because he knew his floor was the 4th overall pick. Honestly, looking back, it's pretty insane that he didn't go number 2 overall. But there's a small percentage of people in every draft that can kind of act like that. Most other people, yes sir, no sir. Where do you want me at what time? And that's how most people act. And it benefits a lot of guys, right? Dak Prescott benefited going from, at the time, a pretty well-run offense to the Cowboys. Couple injuries, boom, he's starting. $500 million later, when Dak Prescott's 40 years old, he will benefited getting drafted there. You would have said, you want to go to a place with Tony Romo's the starter? What would most people? No, I don't want to go there. Russell Wilson, you want to go to Seattle? They just gave Matt Flynn a bunch of money. If you took Deion's mindset, no, I don't, no chance. What are we talking about? I'm not acting like I'm a Deion Sanders fan. Made my childhood when the 49ers signed him and they finally beat the Cowboys and won that Super Bowl. And it's been fun to watch him coach. But that advice, as someone that would have, as a young man, done, and listened to my dad, and my dad was not Deion Sanders, I think he put his son in just a shitty spot. We'll end on that. Have a good night. And again, congrats to the Lions. That was a fantastic win, fantastic game to watch.